Hi guys, here we are. I'm communicating with you from home again. So, the last couple of lessons you've been working on transaction tables, and over the last couple of lessons I've been able to see some really good progress. A few of you have been smashing through them and getting onto some extension work, and the rest of you, I can see that you're getting it. Okay, people within the classroom are operating at different speeds, some going really quickly and smashing through it, and others, okay, just it takes a little while to sink in, but for the most part I'm seeing that the concepts of debits and credits are sinking in. So with that then, I just want to move on this lesson to ledgers. Don't feel like we're moving too quickly, okay, don't freak out, because we will come back and continue to practice transaction tables. We're just going to move on to ledgers for 2 or 3 lessons, and then trial balances, and then we're going to put the whole process together and practice it as a whole. And so you will still go back and do transaction tables and practice those skills. So today what we're hoping to do, post transaction tables to the ledger. Okay, we'll do that by creating a chart of accounts firstly, and then we will get on to posting each transaction from the transaction table to the ledger. So first things first, I would like you to go to curriculum, and I want you to open this file number 1. So you're going to go into business education 2022, business finance, and go into the ledgers folder. And I want you to get this number 1 file for Jamie Demetriadis. We might pause it there while people get that open. Okay, so once you've got that open, what you've got here, first of all, is the transaction table. And this is all correct. This is my solution that I've done, assuming that I've done it correctly, but it is. So that everyone is starting in the same spot, okay? Most of you have done Jamie Demetriadis correctly. We did most of it as a class the other day, but I just want to make sure for this process as we go on to chart of accounts and ledger that everyone is starting from exactly the same position and not with your debits and credits around the other way like how you did them in class the other day. Okay, so this is our starting position. You'll notice some other tabs here, chart of accounts, ledger, and what will be the trial balance. We won't worry about the trial balance for now. We're just concerned with the chart of accounts and the ledger at this stage. Okay, so first, a really important part of this, and to make this easier to do, what I like to do is split our screens. Okay, we'll split my screen, and I want you guys to go and do it as well. So how we do that is we come up the top here to the view ribbon, and we click on view. Straight underneath it, well, it's straight underneath on mine, hopefully it is on yours, but we go and click this button, new window. Okay, so I'm clicking that. It doesn't seem like it's done anything, alright, but what it's done, it's duplicated the window that we've got there. And so then I want you to come back up to view, click on view again, and this time we want to click on arrange all. We want to select vertical, okay, vertical, and I want you to also click Windows of Active Notebook, okay, and click OK. You might need to go back and do that a couple of times, miss, until we get it right. So what we've got screens side by side now, and our first step is going to be chart of accounts. So we get the chart of accounts over on our right, and we have our transaction table over on our left. Okay, so in order to go and create our chart of accounts, what Miss is going to have handed you is a Microsoft Word handout called Steps in Posting to the Ledger. And we're going to follow this, and you'll have this handout with you as you go through and practice these exercises, just so keep you on the straight and narrow and get you out of trouble if you're not sure about how to go about the process. Okay, so we're going to follow this. Okay, chart of accounts is our first step. List all of the accounts in their respective groups. Okay, and the accepted order is revenue, expenses, assets, liabilities, and owner's equity. And we have a numbering system. We make the revenues 100, expenses 200, assets 300, liabilities 400, owner's equity 500. Okay, and so underneath that we can see a bit of a numbering system. And with revenue, sales is typically first, and then everything else is alphabetical after that. Expenses, cost of goods sold is our first expense, but then everything else is alphabetical after that. Assets go in order of liquidity. So cash at bank 301, accounts receivable, we practiced those previously with balance sheets. So we apply this numbering system for order of liquidity, order of payment for liabilities, and owner's equity, capital, and drawings. So the second step will be we go and create our ledger template. And once we've got our ledger template all headed up and set up nicely, we then go and start posting transactions. Okay, so you've got that there beside you to keep handy as you're working through the process. Okay, back to it. So we need to get all of the accounts that we've used in our transaction table over and sorted into the various revenues, expenses, assets, liabilities in our chart of accounts. I typically like to put 100, 200, 300 at the top. Okay, so if you want to take a minute to go and do that. If at any point I'm going too fast through this video, the beauty of it being a video is that you can stop it or pause it, go back. If you miss something, do it all again. Okay, so if I'm going too fast, by all means, pull me up. Okay, so what I tend to do is just work down this list one by one and move them over as we see them. Okay, so our first one that we've got here, as we work down the list, is cash at bank. We know in our order of liquidity, cash at bank is first, and on our handout, it had cash at bank as 301. So I'm going to move that over there, 301, cash at bank. Moving down, our handout tells us that capital, or capital introduced, is 501. So we click over here. Typically, if we've activated this cell as well, little tip, if this cell is activated, if we've clicked over here, then in order to activate a cell over here, we need to click once to activate this side, and then click again to activate the cell. Okay, so 501, capital introduced. Oh, if I could spell. We keep working down the list. Okay, building is going to be a little bit further down the list. I might make it, for the moment, 304. Don't want to confuse the issue too much, but we know that it's not high up in our order of liquidity. So I'm leaving a bit of gap because we're going to have stock. I can see, well, that might be it. So we might end up moving it up a little bit, but we'll see. Building, okay, accounts payable, Ace Realty, and I can also see accounts payable general. If we look at our sheet, accounts payable, we typically make 401 because it's our first in our order of payment. So accounts payable 401, but since we've got two accounts payable, I'm going to make this 401.1, and you'll notice my 0.1 has disappeared. So a couple of little tricks in Excel as we go along. Okay, I know that I've put 401.1 in this cell because I click on it and it tells me up here. So if all of your data is not showing in the cell, what you just do is come up the top here until your mouse pointer changes from that cross into this black arrow left and right, and you can either double click or left click and drag. Double click didn't even work. Left click and drag, make it wider until that 401.1 appears. Okay, and so 401.1, we've got accounts payable, and it's realty. So that's the one there. Okay, stock is going to be our next one. It doesn't look like we've got any accounts receivable down our list here. Typically, accounts receivable is going to be our 302. All right, but we don't have any accounts receivable, so I'm just going to make stock 302. So that's that one done. Next one, accounts payable general. So we're going to make that 401.2. Accounts payable general. And hopefully your cell auto adjusts like mine has. Okay, this one here, that's accounts payable general. How about while we're going here, let's just change that to general so we're not going to confuse ourselves a little bit too much. Okay. We keep coming down. Okay, so where we get a double up with an account that we've already used, we don't have to put it in again. Okay, we've already got it. So that one's already used, so don't put it in again. Cash at bank, we've already used, don't put it in again. Land. I think what I'm going to do here, because let's consolidate this, let's call this land and building. Okay, so I'm going to change that, land and buildings. Alright, so land and buildings, we move on. Bank loan, that's liability, so we're going to make that 402. Bank loan 402. And now we're getting down into some expenses. So we've only got two in this example here. This one's quite easy. So we've got wages and salaries and electricity. Because we've only got the two, I'm just going to go righto 201, because we're going to be in alphabetical order. 201 electricity, 202 wages and salaries. Okay, so that's those two done. Cash at bank, we've already got, so we don't need to put it in again. Drawings is a new one, so we come over here, 502. Drawings, and cash at bank we've already used, so we don't need to put it in again. Okay, Jamie Demetriadis is a fairly easy example. What I'm going to do is copy and paste land and buildings up a little bit, because we didn't end up cut and paste it. We didn't end up with any other assets. I'm going to change land and buildings to 303 just to keep things in order. Okay, hope that doesn't confuse the issue too much. But here's our finished product of our chart of accounts. Expenses in alphabetical order, assets in order of liquidity, liabilities in order of payment, with some sub-accounts and our owner's equity. In the ones that you go on and do, you're going to have some revenue accounts as well to throw into the mix. And Jamie Demetriadis is, as I said, a fairly simple one. Okay, that's our completed chart of accounts. We've got every single account that we've used in our transaction table over into our chart of accounts. What I like to do, I like to work left to right. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to get my chart of accounts over on the left. And I'm going to get my ledger template over on the right. Okay, so first things first, we need a business name at the top. Now we can just type in Jamie Demetriadis, okay? But because it's hard to spell when we don't have it in front of us, what we can do is we can go equals, come over to the transaction table. Oh no, forget that, never mind. But we'll get his names, get his spelling over here. Okay. Business name at the top. Demetriadis. show you later on in Excel. We can cheat a little bit by by being lazy and not having to type things in again. If it's easy, we can just use formulas and reference things in Excel. Excel is very clever, and I'll show you a few little tips about how to shortcut along the way. Didn't work in that instance. Okay, so again, chart of accounts over here on the left, and ledger template over on the right. So if we look at our handout, okay, step number 3 after we set up our chart of accounts, step number 3 is to go and create the ledger. So here's our ledger template, and we need to now get all of the accounts that we've put into our chart of accounts that we've sorted. Okay, the purpose of the chart of accounts is just to sort our accounts that we've used. Now we're going to create our ledger template, and we do that by just listing these down the page. So if we had some revenue, we would put revenue in here, and we would list our revenue accounts underneath that. We don't. Okay, so we're going to start with expenses. And then underneath that, so we just head up expenses, and then we're going to go 201-electricity. Get rid of the caps lock. Leave a couple of lines. Hit enter 3 times. Okay, 202 wages and salaries. Hit enter 3 times again. All right, that's it for our expenses. So now we want to head up assets, caps lock, and we do the same sort of thing. 301 cash at bank. Hit enter 3 times. Maybe hit enter 5 times for cash at bank, because we know that it's the account that's going to have the most transactions in it. So I'll just leave a little bit more space in that one. 302 stock. Hitting enter 3 times again. Land and buildings. We know that there's 2 transactions going in there. I like to leave a space as well, so I've hit enter 4 times there, just preempting what's going to go in there. Alright, caps lock liabilities. And same thing, 401. Just adjust this so I can see what we're doing. 401. Accounts payable. So that's a header account, and then underneath that we're going to go 401.1. Accounts payable. It's realty. Hitting enter 3 times. 401.2. Accounts payable. General. Hitting enter 3 times. 402. Bank loan. Again, if I'm going too fast, just pause me, put me on pause until you catch up, and then you can get me cracking again. On to owner's equity. 501 capital introduced. $502. Okay, I want all of these headings to be bold, but I don't want you to just highlight all the way up there and then Control B and bold it, because I don't want all of the details that's going to go in here to be bold. So my little trick here, using my mouse, is I hold down the Control key, right, and then just select each of these individual cells while I'm holding down the Control key. Okay, and then go Control B, okay, for bold, or select the bold icon, but it's not there while we've got our screen shrunk. And again, these other ones, so I'm going to hold down the Control key, Control, select that, no. Holding down the Control key, selecting them, and Control B. Okay, if you need to pause me before we get on to start doing what's called posting from the transaction table to the ledger. So now we're good to go. And looking at the handout, point 4, complete the ledger, insert the date. Open for me. Insert the date, insert the amount in the correct column, insert the balance, and then add in the particulars. All right, so I'm going to show you how we're going to do that, step 4 from our handout. And the best way to post to the ledger is to work our way down each transaction line by line, just doing exactly what our transaction table tells us to do. All right, so I'm just shrinking that down so I can see everything here. So we start with this one. So this line here is telling us to send $300,000 debit to the cash at bank account. Okay, so over here we come over to the cash at bank account, and we're going to put in, our month is February 01. Well, our month is February, the date is the 1st, so I'm going to put in here February and the 1st. I'm just going to leave the particulars for the minute, okay? And our transaction table, our journal, is telling us to send $300,000 debit to the cash at bank account. So we're going to come over here in the cash at bank account. On the next line down, we're going to put $300,000 into the debit column, just like the journal tells us to, the transaction tells us to. Okay, and what we do is we work our way along here. I might just shrink mine down a little bit. And we need a balance for the account. So because we've put $300,000 into the debit column, our balance is going to be $300,000, and the balance of that account is $300,000 debit. So we need to put something into here, into our particulars. And so when we are posting this transaction here to the cash at bank account, when we put particulars in here we put the account that is on what I call the other side of the transaction. So when we're posting the debit from the transaction, okay, the particulars are what is the account used on the credit side of the transaction. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. But in here, we're putting capital introduced, and that shouldn't be bold, so I'm going to Control B to unbold that. And so if we were looking at the cash at bank in isolation, okay, what this tells me is that on the 1st of February, the owner introduced capital of $300,000 into the business bank account. Okay, so that's why we use those particulars in here. Okay, hope that makes sense. What I like to do, because some of the exercises that you're going to do along the way are going to be quite longer than this. Okay, and sometimes you can get distracted by the person next to you or a conversation with the teacher or whatever, and you might lose your place of where you're up to. So just in this instance here, when you get along to grade 11 and grade 12, you'd use this folio column, okay? But we're not, and we put a number in there. But in grade 10, we're not bothering with that. All I'm simply going to do is I'm going to just use a color to show that I've done that one, okay? So just highlight that, come up, go home, click on the bucket icon, and give it a color, and we know that we've posted that one there. So once that's done, we move on to the next one, okay? And so this line's telling us we're posting $300,000 credit to the capital introduced account. So we come down here to the capital introduced account down the bottom in our owner's equity. We put our date, February the 1st. We're leaving the particulars, and our transaction says $300,000 credit, so we put $300,000 into the credit column, and we need to put a balance in there as well. Okay, so our balance, because we put $300,000 into the credit column, and that's the only transaction, our balance of this account is $300,000 credit. Okay, we go and put our particulars in, and so because we're posting this line here, okay, the credit side of the transaction, our particulars that we put in here is the account that's on the other side of the transaction. So we're going to put in here cash at bank. Okay. Then, if we looked at this account in isolation, okay, this is telling me that on the 1st of February, we put capital introduced into the cash at bank account of $300,000. Okay. So we're going to color code this one. And we move on to the next one. But before we do that, in our ledger, we just want to make sure, okay, like anything with our accounting equation or most things in accounting, we want to make sure that our debits and credits are in balance. It might seem simple, but somewhere along the way, you might have only put 30,000 into one column and 300,000 into the other column, and things might get balanced. You might make simple typos, or you might put two things into the debit column or two things into the credit column, and our debits and credits don't balance. And there's nothing worse than not checking this periodically and getting down to the end of here and posting everything and then realizing, oh bugger, my debits and credits don't balance. Where is my error? And we have to go finding errors. Okay, so just as we finish posting each journal entry, we want to come over here and just double check that our debits and credits balance up. Let's get on to the next one. Okay, so the transaction here is telling us to post $150,000 debit to the building account. So we're going to come down here to land and buildings. We're going to put our date in. February the 2nd, okay, is our date, and our transaction is telling us that we're posting $150,000 debit into our building account. So we're in land and buildings, $150,000 debit, and we need to put a balance in. Since $150,000 debit is the only transaction, our balance in our account is $150,000 debit. Come back, put our particulars in. Okay, we're posting the debit side of the transaction here. So our particulars is the account that's on the credit side of the transaction. So our particulars in here are accounts payable, base royalty. Okay, so that's that line done. Color code it so that we know that we've done it. And now we move on to the next one. $150,000 credit to accounts payable Ace Realty. So we come down here, put in our date, February the 2nd, $150,000 credit. And our particulars from the other side of the journal entry is building or land and buildings. The bold and color coding that. And so we just continue on down the list. Okay, I'm going to continue for the duration of this video to work through the rest of these transactions. So our next one tells us we're posting $1,700 debit to our stock account. We come over here to stock. February the 8th, $1,700 debit. Since it's the only transaction in there so far, our balance is $1,700 debit into the stock account. Particulars from the other side of the journal entry is accounts payable general. Okay, so that's that one done. And now $1,700 credit to the accounts payable general account. So we're coming in here, February the 8th, $1,700, and our balance is $1,700 credit. Our particulars from the other side of the journal entry, stock, hold, okay, stock, and I'm going to highlight that so that we've done it. Now, what I didn't do at the end of the last journal entry, because it is easy to skip over as we're just going from transaction to transaction, is coming up here and just double checking that our debits and credits are in balance. Okay, so every time you put in a debit and a corresponding credit, okay, we just want to make sure that things balance up. So we're good to go. Let's keep going. Alright, so in this one here, we've paid $900 off our accounts payable, and we are posting $900 debit to accounts payable general. Okay, so I like to let things breathe a little bit here, metaphorically, and have a bit of space in between my accounts. So I need to put another transaction in here. Hang on, no I don't. My bad. I want to put another transaction in here. Okay, in between accounts payable general and bank loan. I'll put another transaction in here, and I want to have a line of space. That's just me personally. It makes things easier to read than having it all clumped together. So what I'd like to do, come over here where we would like to insert a line. Click on the number over to the left where you would like to insert a line. Right click and go insert. Okay, and it's going to insert a line for you. And so, accounts payable general, $900. So we're going to put the date in. No need to put Feb in because it's all in February. And this is the first account where we've got a second transaction into an account. So our date here is the 13th. Now, we're putting $900 debit into this account. This is where things get a little bit tricky. It's not hard, but it is something that trips people up. So, if we have $1,700, okay, in our accounts payable general, we bought some stock and we owe our supplier $1,700, okay, so therefore it's a positive liability, it's $1,700 credit. But we've gone and paid $900 off our bill, so that means our liability has gone down by $900. So what we need to do in here is we need to go, and I use a formula, okay, most of you could probably do that calculation in your head, but we use Excel, it's got its own inbuilt calculator. So what we're going to do, we're going to go equals, and that tells Excel that we're going to use a formula. We arrow up to the 1700, and then we're going to go minus $900. Okay, hit enter or tab. I like to go tab because I want to go across to the right. Tab's going to take me across to the right. Okay, so now our balance is $800, and so the thought process now needs to go into it. Where some people get tripped up is by thinking, oh, our last transaction was a debit, therefore this should be a debit in here. Okay, but it's not. Think about it logically. This is a liability account. We had $1,700 that we owe people. We've paid off $900. So we still owe our suppliers $800. It's still a liability of $800. So therefore, it's still a positive liability. The balance is still a credit. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Because we'll continue to practice these skills as we go along. We need to make sure we get our particulars in here. So our particulars are what's on the other side of the journal entry, and that's cash at bank. So we're going to come in here, cash at bank, around particulars. And I'm going to highlight that because it's done. So now we come to the cash at bank account. We're putting $900 into the cash at bank account. So we come up here to our cash at bank account. We put the date in. The date is the 13th. And our transaction table entry is telling us that we're sending $900 credit to the cash at bank account. So we come across here, $900 into the credit column. And the same thing again, now that we've got a second transaction in here, we need to do a calculation for the balance. So we started with $300,000 in our bank account. And now we've gone and paid a bill. So $900 has come out of our bank account. So as you would imagine, we started with 300,000, we paid 900 bucks, so our bank account needs to come down. So we're going to go equals, arrow up to the 300,000. And so in this instance here, we've got a debit balance. The next transaction was a credit, so we're going to minus it. So we minus, and then arrow across to the 900. Hit tab so that we go across. Our balance is now 299,100. But we've still got that amount in our bank account. It's still a positive asset. We still have 299 grand in the bank. So because it's still a positive asset, the balance is still a debit. Okay, it doesn't matter that the last transaction was a credit. We still have money in the bank account. It's still a positive asset. It's still a debit. Okay. Our particulars here was what's on the other side of the account. So it's accounts payable general. Get rid of the bold, so I just hit enter, arrow back up to it, Control B gets rid of the bold. Okay, shortcuts without having to use our mouse all the time. Come over here, highlight this again, and just so that we know that we've done it. Okay, we double check up the top, debits and credits balance up. Let's move on. Okay, so debit $180,000 to the land account. So we come down to land and buildings. We're putting $180,000 debit into the land and buildings account. So land and buildings, put our date in. So our date is the 16th. Okay, 180,000 debit. Okay, in this instance here, all right, our first transaction, we had a balance of $150,000 debit. Here, we've bought more land and buildings, okay, so we're increasing our land and buildings, so it's a debit plus a debit. So in here we're going to go equals, arrow up to the 150, then we get plus, and then arrow across to the 180, and then tab, so that our account's now $330,000. Now as a debit plus a debit, it's a big positive asset, so its balance is debit. Okay. Our particulars here, we use the bank loan to buy the land. Okay, so our particulars in here, bank loan. And we're just going to highlight that. On to the next one, $180,000 credit to the bank loan account. So we come down to the bank loan. Okay, we're going to put in our date, Feb 16. And $180,000 credit. So we put 180,000 in there. Our balance, this is the only transaction in that account so far, and it's a bank loan, it's a liability, so the balance is credit. We get our particulars from the other side of the transaction. So we bought land with this bank loan, and we'll highlight that as being done. Double check if we made any typos or errors. Okay, that all balances up. Let's move on. Okie dokie. Now don't overthink the fact that there's 3 lines in this transaction. Okay, all we're doing is just working through line by line by line. Okay, and it all works itself out because our debits and credits in the transaction balance out. Okay, so we just continue to work through line by line. So the first line, debit 3,400 to wages and salaries. So we come up here, wages and salaries, put our date in. So we've got Feb 19. Okay, it's telling us that we're putting $3,400 debit into that account. So 3,400 debit. It's the only transaction, so our balance is $3,400 debit. That's the local gecko in my house joining us, this accounting party. Okay, and our particulars. Since we've got 3 entries in this particular, what we call a journal, okay, there's 3 lines to this particular transaction. Okay, wages and salaries and electricity are both accounts on the debit side of the journal entry, debit side of the transaction. Our particular still is what's the account used on the credit side. So in here, we're putting cash at bank. Okay, and that just tells us, okay, we've used cash to pay our wages and salaries. Highlight that. Bunskis. And we move on. Electricity account. Come up here. Again, put in Feb 19. And we want to put $280 debit into this account. So our balance is $280 debit. And our particulars, again, just like wages and salaries. Okay, the credit side of the journal entry, the account there is cash at bank. Highlight that. And move on to the next one. So our line here is telling us $3,680 into the cash at bank account. So we put our date in, 19th, 3680 into the credit column. And again, okay, cash at bank, it's a positive asset, it's a debit, but where we've spent money, there's money coming out of our bank account. So in here, we need to go equals, arrow up to 299,000 minus the 3680, tab, okay. We've still got 295,000 in our bank account. It's still a positive asset. It is still a debit. Okay? And so over in here, this is a new one. All right? So we're posting the credit side of this transaction, but we've got two accounts on the debit side of the transaction. So what we're going to put in here, we are going to put both of those accounts in here. So we're going to have wages and salaries and electricity. Okay, like this. So even though we've just posted 3 different lines from our transaction, our debits and credits balance up here. Okay, so hopefully if we've done it correctly, our debits and credits will continue to balance here as we post things. All right, we're almost done, guys. Okay, what's the video at? 42 minutes, far out. Okay, next line, drawings. Debit $2,000 to the drawings account. So we come down here to drawings, and we go Feb, put our date in, 24th, and it's debit $2,000. It's the only transaction, so our balance is $2,000 debit. Our particulars come from the other side of the journal entry. Here's cash at bank. I like that. And move on. Cash at bank, $2,000 credit to the cash at bank account. So we come back over here, cash at bank. I want another line in here so I can put the next transaction in plus have a little bit of space. So I'm going to right click on the 19 and insert a line. And I'm going to put that 24th, credit $2,000. Okay, and so as we did, again, we're taking money out of the bank account. It's a debit balance minus a credit transaction, so equals 295,000 minus 2,000. But we've still got 293 grand in the bank, as I've said previously, so the balance is still a positive asset, it's still a debit. Alright, finishing it off, our particulars from the other side of the journal entry is drawings. And we'll highlight that, even though there's no real need to because we're done. We double check that our debits and credits balance at the top. Okay, and so just again, with using our particulars and how we put particulars in, some people sort of get a little confused with why it's the other side of the account, but you can just see our transactions in our cash at bank account. Okay, well here we can see capital introduced on the 1st, we can see, okay, the owners put money into the bank account. We can see, okay, on the 13th, we paid accounts payable out of the bank account. 19th, we can see we paid wages and salaries out of the bank account. And on the 24th, we can see that the owner took $2,000 out of the bank account. So it just means that we can scroll down and have a look at, okay, what are the transactions that have resulted in us having $293,000 in our bank account, and there they all are. Anyway, that's the process. Okay, feel free. The beauty of this video is you can go back, and particularly in the lead up to your exam as well. This video is here now. It's on the YouTubes. You can get the address off me. If you're struggling in the lead up to the exam, you can go through this process again and use it as part of your study. Hopefully that all worked out. I'm going to shut up now. See you later. Good luck for the next one.